Interstellar is one of the most anti-scientific films in the career of Christopher Nolan. You might ask, how is that possible? After all, the film starring Matthew McConaughey was created with the involvement of real astrophysicists and is based on existing scientific theories. But that didn't stop Nolan from filming Interstellar with religious subtext and a multitude of non-material meanings. Hi, this is 11th Slate, and this is Interstellar Explained. Just like the character played by Matthew McConaughey, we're about to travel across several planets, and on each of them, we'll discover a piece of the true meaning of Interstellar. Despite its fairly clear central message, love for one's children and the fear of missing their growing up, the film by Christopher Nolan hides a huge number of subtext that help convey the director's emotions. Interstellar is literally a hypercube, containing not only the dimensions we understand, but something more, because it may be the most anti-scientific film ever created by real scientists. Just like Cooper, we should begin on Earth and understand where this film really came from. And believe it or not, if it weren't for legal disputes between the studios Paramount and DreamWorks, we would have seen Interstellar directed by Steven Spielberg. The original script was written specifically for him. Physicist Kip Thorne and film producer Linda Obst wanted to create a moderately realistic science fiction film, similar to Contact by Robert Zemeckis. That movie, starring Jodie Foster and once again Matthew McConaughey, was based on a novel by the famous astrophysicist Carl Sagan, and did roughly the same thing that Interstellar would later do, using real physical theories to build a functional story around them. In particular, the theoretical research on wormholes conducted by Kip Thorne, the possibility of traveling to another galaxy in an instant through a rupture in space. For his own film project, the astrophysicist decided to focus the story primarily on traveling through a wormhole, his theory of gravitational waves that would later earn him a Nobel Prize, and of course, Einstein's theory of relativity. Steven Spielberg became interested in the project and commissioned a young screenwriter named Jonathan Nolan to write the script. At that point, his resume included Memento and The Prestige. Interstellar was supposed to become his first project separate from his brother Christopher, but Spielberg parted ways with Paramount, and the space epic was shelved despite having a finished script. Christopher Nolan read the script and suggested that Jonathan take the project with him. It was simply too good to abandon. By that time, Christopher Nolan's name had already become a true icon of modern cinema and a symbol of success. The studio didn't think long about replacing the director. How could anyone refuse a deal like that?
We had no choice. But something sent you here. They chose you.
The first version of the story was more fantastical, though it already contained most of the key elements of the final film. Earth is dying. Farmer Cooper volunteers to pilot a spacecraft through a wormhole, loses a huge amount of time, and eventually returns to a humanity that has changed and moved into space. In Jonathan's version, however, they only visited a single planet. There, they encountered mysterious fractal beings, Chinese robots left behind by a secret earlier expedition, and had to escape radiation from a wandering neutron star. When the script reached Christopher Nolan, it underwent major changes. The first act changed very little. The protagonist lives on a dying Earth and feels frustrated about humanity abandoning space exploration. The dust-based cause of the apocalypse came to Nolan after watching Ken Burns' documentary, The Dust Bowl, which tells the story of a massive ecological disaster in the United States and Canada during the 1930s. The Great Plains suffered devastating dust storms. With the filmmaker's permission, fragments of interviews with real witnesses of that catastrophe were placed at the beginning of Interstellar. Only one thing was added: actress Ellen Burstyn playing the aged Murphy. The film both begins and ends with the words of this character.
No parent should have to watch their own child die.
The terrifying future awaiting his children forces Cooper to leave everything behind and travel into the unknown. Christopher Nolan also introduced the storyline with the ghost behind the bookshelf, both for the twist in the finale and for another emotional metaphor we'll discuss shortly. He also changed the child named Murphy from a son into a daughter, because Nolan himself was often away from home and missed his daughter Flora. The son remained in the story as well, but both the plot and McConaughey's character care about him a bit less.
Is she still alive?
She'll be here in a couple weeks.
Before we continue, if you enjoy video essays about movies, be sure to like this video. Okay, let's continue our journey. Beyond the obligatory mission to save humanity, there's also a somewhat selfish motive driving the main character. He dreams of space. He spent his entire life preparing for flight, but now all of his ambitions have been erased by a new government agenda.
You don't believe we went to the moon?
The film suggests that abandoning your dream may mean missing the only chance for salvation, even if that chance seems faint. When addressed to the audience, the message is symbolic. Within the story itself, it is literal. Looking only at your feet instead of toward the stars leads to the collapse of the human spirit and its desire for progress. Yes, even in the very first exposition act, there's a hidden idea about the necessity of dreaming and striving for the impossible, because that very striving will ultimately save humanity. Having said goodbye to their homeworld, the spacecraft Endurance enters the wormhole. The heroes arrive on Miller's planet, and here we approach the key moment of the story, though in terms of meaning, it's only the first step, a reflection on the fleeting nature of time. The visit to the water planet, which figuratively speaking devours the time of its visitors, is the cornerstone of the entire film, the emotional anchor that leads to the most tragic scene of the whole adventure.
Hey, Dad.
And despite the absolutely stunning, heartbreaking result of this moment, and despite my love for this movie, the picky critic inside me always wakes up and starts grumbling about... Wait, first the idea. As I mentioned earlier, Christopher Nolan was inspired by his own experience of communicating with his children, who were growing up without him while the director wandered around the world making great movies. On one hand, he follows his dream and fulfills himself in the profession he loves, just like Cooper going into space. You could even say he's saving his family by earning money and providing economic stability. But on the other hand, he irreversibly loses precious time he could have spent with his loved ones. A similar idea is embedded in Inception, which I'll talk about soon as well, especially why some people call that film almost plagiarism. And if you missed the previous episode, there's already a breakdown of Back to the Future on my channel, the film that many once thought might be a flop. Interstellar, like much of Christopher Nolan's filmography, continues reflecting on the director's ideas about family values. Everything we do for our children, but every action has an equal reaction. A step toward the well-being of future generations takes away the time you could spend with them. That's the paradox. Sacrifice is inevitable. This was one of the key elements that resonated deeply with Christopher Nolan in his brother's script, something that aligned perfectly with his worldview. And not only his, Nolan's longtime collaborator Hans Zimmer joined the project and composed one of the best soundtracks of his career. What's particularly remarkable is that he wrote it long before filming even began, after reading just a short paragraph briefly describing the story of the future film. And once again, he poured into the music his own emotions about watching his children grow up and inevitably drift away. I've seen many opinions that the moment when Cooper watches the accumulated video messages is the most powerful scene in the entire film, and I'm inclined to agree. It's obvious that this was the scene that convinced Nolan to take on the project in the first place.
And today I'm the age you were when you left. So it would be a real good time for you to come back.
Symbolically and cinematically, it's executed flawlessly. But was it really necessary for the characters to descend to Miller's planet?
Now, Miller hasn't sent much, but what she has sent is very promising. It's water, it's organics.
Seriously, everyone knows that 1 hour here equals 7 years on Earth, and you've only received a single message from Dr. Miller. It's logical to assume she just had landed and couldn't possibly have gathered reliable data yet. Miller simply didn't have time to study anything, and yet...
On this planet's time, she just landed hours ago.
Why does this come as a surprise? Didn't you already establish that time moves much faster there? This crucial descent should have had a stronger reason behind it. Maybe the betrayal of Wes Bentley's character or a technical malfunction. Anything that would justify losing years because of unconfirmed data from a scientist who had essentially just landed on the planet. Especially considering that everyone still believed in Plan A, evacuating people from Earth, and therefore should have valued time more than anyone. As a result, the catalyst for the film's central tragedy feels somewhat forced. Of course, that's only if you analyze the plot very meticulously, something audiences love to do, especially with Christopher Nolan films. Nolan himself has said he worries about that sometimes, but ultimately considers such attention to detail a compliment. In fact, searching for plot holes in Interstellar has become a favorite pastime on the internet. And yes, there are plenty of inaccuracies here. But hunting for cinematic mistakes isn't the goal of my video. It's far more important simply to acknowledge their existence, because that brings us closer to the true intention of the film, to encourage the viewer to believe rather than to logically dissect everything happening on screen. It's remarkable that under the strict supervision of prominent astrophysicists, so many details could still slip through. The paradox is that the most scientific film in Christopher Nolan's career is at the same time built on symbolism, and believe it or not, that was intentional. All of this is embedded in the film's central message. But for now, it's time to leave Miller's planet behind, accept the relentless passage of time, and move forward to Mann's planet, where we confront loneliness. That idea is embodied by Matt Damon, who loves getting lost on uninhabited planets. Now he plays Dr. Mann. He falsified data about the most lifeless place imaginable just so that someone would come looking for him.
I knew that if I just pressed that button, then somebody would come and save me.
And that's one of the risks that comes with chasing a dream, ending up forgotten on the sidelines of life and attracting attention only through lies. A major inspiration for the events of Mann's planet was the classic film The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, starring Humphrey Bogart, a story about gold seekers gradually losing their sanity. Fear for one's own life, suspicion, greed. Panic grows like a snowball and eventually reveals the true nature of a person, ready to do anything to achieve their goal. In Mann's case, that goal was simply to feel another human presence again and return home. Cooper will find himself in a similar position when he enters the five-dimensional space. He is alone, except for the robot Tars, able only to revisit metaphorical photographs of his daughter and realize how much he has missed.
Don't let me leave, Merv!
And maybe he also misses his son? He does remember he has a son, right?
Dad didn't raise me. Grandpa did, and he's buried out back with Mom and Jesse.
The kid may be independent, but remembering him at least a little inside the Hypercube would have been respectful. In many ways, Tom is the real tragic character of Interstellar. Abandoned by his father, forced to take over the farm at a young age, giving up his own dreams and remaining tied to his childhood home for the rest of his life, watching his family slowly perish in the dust apocalypse and losing any hope for a happy ending. But the narrative focus is, of course, on the dreamer Murph, while Tom, played by Casey Affleck, is framed almost like a villain. Yet that's simply his place within the structure Christopher Nolan built. Through Tom, Nolan also expresses the loneliness of someone abandoned by those closest to him. His father left, his grandfather died, and his sister devoted herself entirely to science. Tom has a wife and a son, but inside he is still alone. He has lost his dreams and is forced to look down at the ground instead of up at the sky, exactly as the new government ideology demands.
He's gonna make an excellent farmer.
The frozen world of Mann's planet, a cradle of loneliness. Like the watery Miller's Planet, was written into the script by Christopher Nolan, replacing the earlier version where the characters wandered through underground tunnels filled with Chinese robots. Nolan introduced a more modular structure to the story, more planets, more subtext, more variety, and spectacle for the audience. But in doing so, he also moved away from the harder science fiction of the original script in favor of expressing his own emotions, perhaps more strongly than in any of his other films. As the director himself has said, Interstellar gives the most to those who don't try to resist it. If you lock yourself inside a prison of logic and try to rationalize the landing on Miller's planet, or Dr. Mann's fanatical fear of trusting the astronauts who came to rescue him, you'll miss the true reason Interstellar exists. It's not just about translating groundbreaking scientific theories onto the screen. It's also a simple statement. The only thing that can save us is love. The answer was always right in front of the characters. They should have followed the main coordinates and gone straight to the habitable planet of Edmunds. And by main coordinates, Christopher Nolan means love. Yes, in the director's pragmatic universe, even love can be treated like a physical quantity.
My connection with Murph, it is quantifiable. It's the key.
Alongside gravity and friction, there exists a very real force of love. Like a compass, it points Anne Hathaway's character, Dr. Amelia Brand, toward where the expedition should go, to Edmund's planet, where her beloved is.
She's in love with Wolf Edmunds. Is that true?
Yes.
But first the crew falls victim to haste, flying to the nearest planet, Miller's, and then to false authority, trusting the reputation of Dr. Mann. Yet throughout the journey, they are guided by love. Only by surrendering to it, by accepting that warm feeling as their compass, can they succeed. Cooper's love for Murph creates the hypercube that ultimately saves humanity. Amelia finds a habitable world, and the name of her beloved becomes the name of humanity's new home. It's a beautiful idea that the force of love will save everyone. Not victory over an enemy, not a decisive battle, simply love. That's what makes Interstellar so distinctive. There is no fundamental conflict between good and evil. Even Dr. Mann, who becomes a killer, is not a full villain. He is a victim, desperate to return to human society. And until the very end, Cooper does not wish him harm and tries to save him.
There is a moment.
But this humanistic message raises even more questions about Interstellar itself. All this technical brilliance and scientific accuracy for what? For a statement about the power of love? Aren't those categories supposed to be opposites on the axis of scientific thinking? And that's one of the hardest aspects of approaching Interstellar. Many of its moments are meant to be felt emotionally rather than analyzed with cold logic. Most professional critics couldn't do that. They approached the film analytically and logically, and as a result gave it one of the lowest Rotten Tomatoes scores in Christopher Nolan's directing career. Yes, believe it or not, only Tenet sits lower. Meanwhile, audiences responded to the film far more warmly. With Interstellar, Christopher Nolan asks the audience to trust him and immerse themselves in the film, to take a leap of faith. And now it's time to reach the final destination of our journey, the Hypercube, a place that combines the ideas of all the planets we've just visited, and also brings together two fundamental forces, faith and science. When Kip Thorne consulted Christopher Nolan, he managed to bring Interstellar as close to scientific accuracy as science fiction can possibly get. Originally, the characters were supposed to travel to Saturn using faster-than-light speed, but Thorne insisted that such travel was impossible. As a result, the Endurance's journey took 2 years instead of just a few weeks. The same applies to the depiction of spherical wormholes, or the black hole with its golden halo. As later research and actual photographs of black holes would show, Interstellar was remarkably accurate in this regard. According to Thorne, there is only one moment in the entire film that is truly unrealistic. What do you think it is? Maybe the hypercube made of strings, or the transforming, highly ingenious robots?
Auto self-destruct T-minus 10, 9.
Let's make that 60%.
Not at all. It's this moment. Yes, the frozen cloud is the greatest artistic liberty allowed under Thorne's strict supervision. Even the five-dimensional space, incomprehensible to the human mind, does not contradict existing scientific theories. Yet, as I mentioned earlier, the central themes of the story are love, fear, loneliness, and importantly, faith. Surprisingly, a film that appears completely anti-religious at first glance actually contains a strong subtext about the influence of destiny on our lives and its sense of inevitability.
Murphy's Law doesn't mean that something bad will happen. What it means is that whatever can happen.
This is connected to the name Murphy, which hints at the role of fate and to Cooper's final and most important decision. He literally takes a leap of faith when he enters the event horizon. There he encounters essentially a god. Only this god is an evolved human being. In other words, Christopher Nolan rejects traditional religiosity. There are no higher beings saving humanity. Humanity saves itself, people from the future who have evolved into a new five-dimensional existence. But if humans can control space, create wormholes, manipulate time, send Cooper into the hypercube to transmit coordinates to his past self, and the key to salvation through a watch, then how are they different from God? It's impossible not to recall Arthur C. Clarke's famous quote, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic," which means any sufficiently advanced human becomes indistinguishable from a god. That is the heretical message, full of religious undertones.
Not you and me, but a people. A civilization that's evolved past the 4 dimensions we know.
A person must believe in love, in dreams, even in science, but never forget that the human being is the center of their own perception of reality. We create the world both around us and inside ourselves. And since we mentioned Arthur C. Clarke, Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey explored something similar. Humanity searched for divine black monoliths to understand its own evolution, which eventually led to the transformation of Dave, the film's protagonist, into a new form of life. Christopher Nolan is less radical in this regard and doesn't turn Cooper into a cosmic child. but he still gives humanity a chance at a new life in space. In other words, he shows that the pursuit of a dream and the faith in it saved everyone. The protagonist loses the chance to witness his children grow up, an inevitable sacrifice many dreamers make. Now all that remains is for him to fly toward Brand to save the last person close to him from loneliness. Murph understands this. She believes in her father, the ghost behind her bookshelf, and guides him in the right direction.
Go.
Where?
Brand.
And in the very next video on my channel, Alien, a full breakdown of every project in the franchise. A series that really does seem like it has some kind of curse hanging over it. Interstellar is yet another achievement of Christopher Nolan, a uniquely unusual film filled with anti-scientific ideas, relying on questions of faith and the inevitability of fate, yet wrapped in a scientifically credible shell under the supervision of real scientists. It's a movie that becomes extremely vulnerable when dissected logically, but works perfectly if you surrender to emotion, just as the director himself suggests. The film received a restrained response from meticulous critics but enthusiastic praise from audiences, who helped it earn $770 million at the box office on a budget of $165 million. Interstellar largely missed out on major awards, winning only an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. Zimmer's score and the film's outstanding sound design were left out. Christopher Nolan himself didn't receive a directing nomination, and the film wasn't even nominated for Best Picture, something that seems almost unbelievable today. But as Murphy Law says, if something is destined to happen, it will happen. And Interstellar was destined to take its place of honor, both in Nolan's filmography and in the history of world cinema, and rightly so. Because when Christopher Nolan translates his own parental emotions, the cornerstone of his work, onto the screen, holding back tears becomes nearly impossible. The next video is already on the screen. Click it and keep watching. Thanks for joining me on this journey. This is 11 Slate.